You think change comes from trying. You think more effort, tighter routines, and better hacks will flip the switch. You believe your problem is discipline. It feels moral. It feels safe. It is also the reason you loop. People do not fail from lack of effort. They fail because they try to change actions while protecting the same identity. You hold the same story about who you are. You defend it every day without noticing. Your mind treats your current identity as home base. It filters evidence to keep that story intact. In psychology, it is called cognitive dissonance reduction. In the brain, it feels like relief. The identity wins, the change loses, and you think you just need to try harder. You do not. You need to end the version of you that needs to try. That sentence sounds aggressive for a reason. Your nervous system resists threats to who you think you are more than it resists pain. The amygdala flags social and status risk as danger. The anterior cingulate watches for conflict. The default mode network rebuilds your narrative on the fly to explain away what does not match it. You rationalize. You delay. You protect the image. Quantum leaps do not come from more strain. They come from crossing identity lines that remove resistance. Actions that used to feel like effort turn into what you do by default. Not because you forced it, because the cost of not doing it no longer makes sense to the person you are. There are 9 identity shifts that create this. They are not tactics. They are choices about who you are loyal to. The past or the future. The safe or the true. You know which one you serve by what you defend. Stop being the person who tries. Become the person for whom the outcome is normal. This is not semantics. Trying signals internal negotiation. Operating signals closure. The brain uses prediction to conserve energy. When an action matches identity, the basal ganglia automates it and the prefrontal cortex relaxes. You feel less debate. You feel less drag. You stop counting the cost of the action because it is already priced into who you are. The opposite is a life of micro bargains with yourself that you always lose. Move from chasing outcomes to owning standards. Goals are fantasies until the standard makes them non-optional. Standards are identity rules. I am the kind of person who sleeps like an athlete. I am the kind of person who ships work weekly. It is not about self-talk. It is about status with yourself. When a standard becomes identity, missing it feels like a break in self-respect. That pain is useful. It is not guilt. It is a correction signal. Epictetus drew the line 2,000 years ago. Focus on what you can control, then make it a duty. The person who owns standards beats the person who wants results because standards drive daily behavior and results ride on that. Shift from seeking approval to enforcing alignment. Most people try to collect permission before they move. They leak months waiting for family, friends, or strangers to confirm choices. It is a childhood reflex. Adults who keep it stay small. The locus of control must flip. Agreement from others becomes nice to have, not required. This is not antisocial. It is anti-permission. Marcus Aurelius wrote about acting according to nature and reason, not applause. The identity that enforces alignment asks one question. Does this move me toward my aim while staying within my ethics? If the answer is yes, it happens. The social cost is accepted up front. You save time, and you stop bargaining with people whose incentives are not yours. Upgrade from a fragile self-image to an error-correcting one. Fragile identity treats feedback as threat. Error-correcting identity treats feedback as data. The difference is biological. The anterior cingulate cortex detects prediction error and flags it for update. If your self-image is tied to being right, you suppress the signal. If your self-respect is tied to getting it right, you use the signal. The Stoics called it objective judgment. Modern neuroscience calls it learning. Hold your status with yourself by your willingness to correct, not your need to defend. You become calm because you are hard to embarrass. You become dangerous because you improve while others protect a mask. Replace time hoarding with leverage identity. People count hours and call it discipline. Professionals design conditions and call it leverage. One identity asks how much time a thing will take. The other asks what system will make this pay forever. Parkinson's law, the planning fallacy, and plain fatigue kill hour counting. Leverage identity makes different choices. Fewer commitments with higher output. Constraint by default. Attention guarded like capital. It is not hustle. It is structure. The prefrontal cortex has limited bandwidth. The more open loops you carry, the weaker you get. Reduce loops, raise magnitude. That shift makes sporadic effort irrelevant because compounding does the work. Trade belonging for selective exposure. Your current identity exists inside social contracts. You are predictable to your circle. They reward you for staying predictable. This is not malicious. It is how groups maintain stability. If you want to move, those contracts must change. Not with drama, with selection. Choose environments that make your current identity expensive. Sit where your excuses are invalid. The social brain calibrates to norms through mirror neurons and status cues. If the norm in the room is excellence, you adapt or you leave. This is not about finding better friends. It is about accepting short-term loneliness while you find a room where your future self is the baseline. Transmute stress from threat to training. Most people treat stress as evidence they should stop. High performers treat certain stress as a readiness signal. The HPA axis and sympathetic system light up not only for danger, but for challenge. The label you apply changes the effect. Reappraisal shifts the experience from fear to focus. Identity matters here. If you see yourself as someone who can carry weight, arousal becomes fuel. Not bravado, biology. With practice, amygdala activation becomes information, not instruction. Vagal tone improves. Recovery speeds up. You are not trying to be brave. You are becoming the person for whom exposure is normal. That unlocks actions you used to avoid without a fight each time. Move from narrative-driven to measurement-aligned. The default mind tells stories to protect mood. You explain away inconsistency. You blame context. It keeps identity stable. The measurement-aligned identity refuses that drug. It asks for numbers. Not to brag, to see. Nietzsche warned about the comfort of illusions. Strip them. Define the few metrics that prove you are who you claim to be. Keep them visible. When the numbers contradict your story, change the behavior or change the claim. No drama. This removes the gray area where trying lives. You either met your standard or you did not. That edge creates movement because it kills the false piece of almost. Evolve from incrementalist to discontinuity opportunist. Linear thinking keeps you safe in small gains. The world does not pay linearly. Power laws run outcomes. Asymmetry decides careers. The identity that expects chunks behaves differently. It prunes aggressively. It says no to plateaus, even if they are comfortable. It searches for inflection points, then overstays in them. It is hard on sunk costs. It ends things that do not scale its future, even if they keep its present stable. Prospect theory says losses hurt about twice as much as equal gains please. Most people serve that pain. The discontinuity identity accepts the pain of loss now for the non-linear payoff later. It is not gambling. It is understanding base rates and variance, then aligning your life with them. Adopt self-custody over your attention. Your life is the sum of what you attend to. Algorithms and crowds want custody of that. If you let them, your identity gets rented out by the highest bidder. The salience network fires, and you think the most visible is the most important. It is not. The identity shift is simple. You decide what enters and what stays. You can be reachable, or you can be sovereign. Not both. Machiavelli wrote about appearing virtuous while serving necessity. In the modern world that begins with attention, what you do not see cannot bait you. What you schedule controls what you become. Filter as if your future depends on it. It does. Now look at the contrast. The person who tries fights themselves every day. The person who shifts identity removes the fight. One lives in constant negotiation. The other lives with policy. One waits for energy. The other respects systems. One wants agreement. The other expects resistance and moves anyway. One believes stress is a stop sign. The other reads it as a signal. One wears stories. The other runs numbers. One climbs stairs. The other finds elevators and pays the price to ride them. One is accessible. The other is selective. If this still sounds like effort, it is because part of you is arguing for survival. That part is not evil. It is outdated. You can thank it and move past it. Seneca wrote that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Wasting time is not only scrolling in distractions. It is guarding an identity that no longer serves your aims. Here is the uncomfortable slice. People you like will prefer the old you. It made them comfortable. They knew where you fit. If you shift, you will trigger their prediction error. They will test you. Small jokes, soft doubts, polite delays. If you return to your old role to settle their nerves, you choose them over your future. If you hold the line, some will recalibrate and respect you more. Others will distance. Both outcomes are fine. A new identity is expensive at the start. Then it pays. The brain adapts. The room changes. Your standards become obvious to anyone with eyes. Behaviorally, this is simple. Self-concept drives habit loops. Habit loops drive environment selections. Environment selections feed back into self-concept. If you shift the self-concept, the whole loop updates. Effort becomes alignment. Dopamine stops coming only from imagined outcomes and starts coming from completed standards. This is where trying dies. You will still work hard. You will still be tired. You will still face problems. The difference is you will not be at war with yourself. You will not need to convince yourself. You will not need to negotiate the same action 100 times. You will just do it because it matches the person you are. Let me make the claim plain. These 9 shifts are not motivational. They are identity-level commitments that disable resistance. They work because they align with how minds keep energy and status. They work because they reduce internal debate. They work because they produce objective, compounding advantages. They will make certain people uncomfortable. They will also make you precise. Most people will not do this, not because they cannot, because they fear the social cost of not being who they were. They fear being judged for trying to be more. They fear failing publicly while others watch. So they try in private and explain in public. That keeps them safe and stuck. If you can let that die, you move into a smaller group. The group that is calm under pressure because their actions are not up for discussion. The group that looks like it is not trying because it is not negotiating. If you recognize yourself in the old beliefs, good. That is the first sign you are awake. If you feel defensive, better. That means the identity is real. If you feel relief, best. That means the argument is over. The rest is follow through. Choose the identity that makes your aim a standard. Enforce alignment without apology. Treat feedback as data. Trade hours for leverage. Seek rooms that force you to adapt. Read stress as a readiness signal. Trust measurement over mood. Bet on asymmetry. Guard your attention like power. Then let time do what time does for people who live without internal friction. This is not for everyone. It was not designed to be. Most will look for softer words and easier promises. You will not find them here. What you will find is a private advantage. Knowledge that stays hidden in plain sight because it demands a price. If you can pay it, you will not need to ask for permission again. If you want more of this, stay close. Subscribe if you intend to join the minority that moves without trying. Ignore it if you want to keep explaining. Either way, Your identity decides. And it decides now.